It was 11:47 p.m. when the glow of the phone screen washed over Elaine's tired face. The hospital shift had ended hours ago, yet the voices of patients still echoed in her mind. She sat at the dining table, scrolling through photos she'd promised herself she'd delete weeks ago, selfies taken at work, messages half-written and unsent. The house was silent except for the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint clink of ice melting in a glass of water. Darren entered quietly, his steps measured, his expression unreadable. "Still awake?" he asked, voice steady but edged with fatigue. Elaine smiled without looking up. "Couldn't sleep." He nodded, moving toward the speaker on the shelf. "Can I use your phone? Mine died." Her thumb froze above the screen. It was only a second, one heartbeat, but he saw it. The hesitation. "Sure," she said quickly, forcing a casual tone. She slid the phone across the table, locking the screen with a practiced swipe. "Just open Spotify, it's already there." Darren stared at the device, his reflection dim in the black glass. Right. He didn't press. Not yet. They went through the quiet rituals of bedtime, the brushing of teeth, the half-hearted kiss, the turning of bodies away from each other under the same blanket. Elaine listened to his breathing slow, waiting for it to settle into the rhythm of sleep. Her mind raced. She should change her passwords again, delete messages, clear the hidden folder. The thought flickered and died with exhaustion. By 1 a.m., Darren's eyes were still open. The faint blue light from the window drew patterns across the ceiling. He had noticed her secrecy for weeks, late-night texts, silent smiles at nothing. Maybe paranoia, he told himself, or maybe not. When Elaine's breathing deepened beside him, he slipped from bed and padded to her purse hanging on the chair. Inside, he found her small nursing notebook, P.N.s, receipts, and, tucked between pages, a folded sticky note. 2 words written neatly in blue ink. Facebook password. Darren stared at it, heart thudding with the slow dread of confirmation. The handwriting was hers. The word beneath it, familiar, personal, and painfully simple, felt like a door handle under his fingers. He stood there for a long time, the glow of his phone screen illuminating his face as he typed the password. He hesitated before hitting enter. His reflection looked back at him, warped by the glass, eyes full of something between fear and fury. The login succeeded. A flood of messages scrolled down the screen, names, emojis, laughter, hearts, and one name he recognized immediately, Dr. Levi Santos. Darren's chest tightened. He read one line, then another, unable to stop. The casual intimacy in the words sliced through the quiet room. Elaine's voice, gentle and professional by day, had turned tender and reckless at night. From the bed, Elaine stirred. "Darren?" she murmured sleepily. He locked the phone, setting it face down on the dresser. "Yeah," he said softly, forcing calm. "Just checking the time." She mumbled something and drifted back to sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the shadowed outline of her body beneath the sheets. The trust that had once bound them now hung by a single thread, frayed and trembling. Outside, a dog barked somewhere down the street. The refrigerator clicked on. In the dull hum of the house, Darren's breathing grew heavy, deliberate. The sticky note lay on the nightstand beside him, glowing faintly under the lamp's low light. He folded it once, then again, slipping it into his pocket like evidence. Tomorrow, he told himself, he would confront her. Not tonight. Not while she slept, innocent in appearance, dangerous in truth. But as he turned off the lamp, the thought refused to quiet. Every heartbeat spelled the same word, password. It was more than a code. It was a key, one that had just unlocked the first crack in their perfect life. The next morning broke like a secret trying to stay hidden. Sunlight crept through the curtains, falling across the phone still lying on Darren's bedside table. He hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, his mind echoing with the messages he'd read. Digital ghosts whispering from the dark corners of his wife's Facebook inbox. Elaine stirred beside him, stretching, yawning softly. "You didn't sleep?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "Just couldn't shut my brain off," he muttered. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Calm, almost too calm. She smiled faintly, unaware, and headed toward the kitchen. Darren watched her go, the rhythm of her footsteps oddly steady. The same woman who'd laughed with him in wedding photos 9 months ago now felt like someone else entirely. A stranger wearing his wife's face. As the kettle hissed and coffee filled the air, Darren unlocked his phone again. The screen flared to life, revealing the chat between Elaine and Dr. Levi Santos. He scrolled slowly this time, reading every word. "Levi, you looked beautiful today. That blue uniform doesn't do you justice." Elaine, "Stop, someone might see this." Levi, "Let them. You deserve more than hiding." His thumb trembled. Each line felt like a blade pressed deeper into the soft place where love once lived. He scrolled further back. Weeks of messages, emojis, late-night confessions. Mentions of private meetings, small gifts, stolen laughter in the hospital corridor. The words weren't graphic, but they carried an intimacy no husband should have to read. Darren felt a pressure build behind his eyes. The kind that came not from anger, but humiliation. From the kitchen, Elaine called, "You want toast?" He didn't answer. He was staring at a photo now, a blurry snapshot of a coffee cup on a hospital desk. Below it, Levi had written, "For the woman who keeps my heart beating." Elaine's replied, "Ollie, don't say that. You'll get us both in trouble." Trouble. The word hung there, mocking him. He set the phone down, gripping the table to steady his hands. The room felt smaller, suffocating. He remembered their wedding vows, her trembling hands as she promised forever. He remembered how she cried when her father died, how he'd held her through it. How could all of that exist in the same heart that typed those words? Elaine entered, carrying his coffee. "Here," she said gently. "You look pale." He glanced up. Her concern might have been genuine, or it might have been performance. He couldn't tell anymore. "Just tired," he said. "Work stress?" "Something like that." Her smile faltered slightly. Maybe she felt it. That invisible distance spreading between them. He took the mug, hands steady now. "I was thinking," he said slowly, "maybe we should go out tonight. Dinner. Talk." Her eyes flickered, cautious. "Sure. That sounds nice." Darren nodded, lips pressing into a faint smile. Inside, a cold clarity was forming, the kind that comes right before a storm. After she left for work, the house grew silent again. He sat on the couch, staring at her profile picture. That familiar smile that now looked like a mask. The phone buzzed once more. Another message. Levi again. Levi. "Miss you already. Same place tonight?" Darren's jaw clenched. His thumb hovered over the keyboard before typing a reply. But he stopped. Not yet. Not now. He needed to see more. To know everything. The light shifted through the window, cutting his face in half. One side calm, one side shadowed. He whispered to himself, "You'll tell me the truth, Elaine, even if it kills us both." The morning after felt almost staged, too calm, too bright, as if the world refused to acknowledge the quiet war unfolding beneath its light. Elaine moved through the kitchen with a rhythm that looked effortless. Eggs sizzling, toast browning, her voice humming a love song from years ago. She wore the mask she'd practiced for months, the one that said everything was fine. Darren sat at the table, silent. He watched her movements with the stillness of a man taking inventory of what remained. Every glance, every word, every smile. He measured it, catalogued it, dissected it. "Coffee?" she asked, turning with a faint smile. He nodded. "Thanks." Their hands brushed briefly as she placed the mug before him. She felt the static in his touch, the unspoken question pressing against the air. Did he know? No, he couldn't. She had deleted the messages, changed the password. She'd been careful. At least, she thought she had. "I might be late tonight," she said casually, eyes fixed on her plate. "New shift rotation." Darren's spoon paused mid-stir. "Really? Thought your rotation changed last week." Elaine's heart stumbled. She forced a small laugh. "Schedules keep shifting. You know hospitals." He smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, I know hospitals." The silence that followed wasn't ordinary silence. It carried weight, the kind that fills a room until it presses against your lungs. Elaine busied herself wiping non-existent crumbs, pretending not to feel it. Description: steam coiled from the coffee mugs. Sunlight cut sharp angles across the counter. Outside, a lawnmower droned, distant and indifferent. Inside, two people performed the choreography of marriage while suspicion danced between them. At work, Elaine tried to drown the unease in routine. Blood pressure checks, patient charts, the antiseptic smell of corridors. But every face she greeted felt like a mask she was wearing. Her reflection in the glass of the medicine cabinet seemed foreign, tired eyes, forced calm. She thought of Darren, of the way he'd watched her that morning. The stillness in him was worse than anger. Anger she could argue with, silence she could not predict. During lunch, her phone buzzed. "Levi, you seemed distracted yesterday. Everything okay?" She stared at the message, thumb hovering. Then typed, "Just tired. Darren's been distant." 3 dots blinked. "Levi. Maybe he suspects. You sure he doesn't know?" Her pulse spiked. She deleted the thread entirely, heart hammering. The irony wasn't lost on her, how the thing that made her feel alive was now the thing threatening to destroy her. When her shift ended, night had settled over the city. She drove home with the radio off, headlights carving tunnels through rain. In her mind, she rehearsed normalcy, smile, small talk, light jokes. Darren was waiting on the couch, television muted, a beer untouched on the table. "Long day?" he asked. "Exhausting." She dropped her bag, slipped off her shoes. "We were short-staffed again." He nodded slowly, studying her face. "You should rest." "I will," she murmured, turning toward the bedroom. But as she passed, she felt his gaze follow. Heavy, probing, unreadable. Narration. In the mirror, she met her own reflection, whispered to herself, "Keep it together. Just keep it together." Behind her, she could hear Darren moving, quietly, deliberately, like someone pacing out a decision. Description: the hallway light flickered once, then steadied. Rain ticked against the window pane. The air smelled faintly of soap and fear. Elaine lay in bed pretending to sleep, the rhythmic thud of Darren's footsteps echoing from the living room. Tomorrow, she told herself, would be better. She would act softer, kinder, like the perfect wife again. But deep inside, she knew something irreversible had begun. His silence wasn't retreat. It was calculation. And somewhere across town, a phone buzzed on a doctor's desk. Dr. Levi Santos, waiting for a reply that would never come. The next morning, the hospital corridors hummed with fluorescent light and hurried footsteps. Elaine moved through them like a ghost, smiling at colleagues, checking vitals, pretending everything inside her wasn't quietly breaking apart. The smell of antiseptic clung to her hands, a scent she used to associate with healing. Now it just reminded her of cover-ups. She spotted Dr. Levi Santos near the nurses' station, his white coat crisp, his smile practiced. Their eyes met briefly, and for a fraction of a second her heart stuttered. He gave the smallest nod, a silent question. She turned away, pretending not to see. Later, in the supply room, he found her alone. "You've been avoiding me," he said softly. "I can't talk here," she whispered. "People will notice." "They already notice," Levi replied, stepping closer. "You look terrified." "Did he find out?" Elaine shook her head, though the lie trembled. "No, he's just different lately." Levi's eyes narrowed. "Different how?" "He watches me," she said, voice cracking. "Everything I say, every move I make. It's like he's waiting for me to confess something." Levi sighed, lowering his voice. "Maybe we should stop for a while. Let things cool down." Her chest tightened. "You think I can just erase you, like none of this happened?" Description. Fluorescent light buzzed above them, casting pale shadows across the metal shelves. The scent of disinfectant filled the small room. Her pulse echoed in her ears. Narration. He reached out, brushing her hand gently. "Elaine, I'm saying this because I care about you. If he knows, he could do something reckless." She stepped back, eyes glistening. "Or maybe I will." For a moment, they just stared at each other, two people who had started something neither of them could now control. Then she turned, leaving him standing amid boxes of gauze and sterile gloves, his expression tightening into quiet regret. By afternoon, whispers began to ripple through the hospital. Two nurses near the break room laughed quietly as she passed. One of them muttered, "Dr. Santos's favorite nurse." The words stuck like glass in her mind. In her locker, she found a folded note. No name, no handwriting she recognized. Just one line. "Secrets don't stay buried in hospitals." Her hands shook as she tore it into pieces. When her shift ended, Levi waited by the side exit, umbrella in hand. Rain streaked the parking lot like silver needles. "Let me drive you home," he offered. "No," she said sharply. "Someone might see us." "Elaine, please. You can't keep living like this, half in fear, half in guilt." She glanced toward the street where Darren's car might appear at any moment. "I can't explain right now. I just need time." "Time won't change what's already broken," he said quietly. Her throat tightened. "Then let me be the one to fix it." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the rain, water sliding down his face like the truth he could never speak aloud. Narration. Back home, Darren sat on the couch, phone in hand, screen aglow. He had followed her location, watched the dot move from hospital to parking lot, stopping briefly before home. The pattern told a story words never could. When Elaine entered, drenched and breathless, he smiled faintly. "Long shift?" She nodded. Rain slowed everything down. He studied her face, the wet strands of hair, the trembling hands. "You should dry off. You'll get sick." "Yeah," she whispered, walking past him toward the bathroom. Description. Behind the closed door, water ran from the faucet, masking the sound of her sobs. Narration. In the living room, Darren opened her phone bill again. Same number, same timestamps, same late-night pattern. Bayern. The truth was no longer a suspicion. It was data printed in black and white. He stared at the name one last time, Dr. Levi Santos, and whispered to himself, "So this is the man." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, shaking the windows. Tomorrow night, he decided, they would sit down together. No more lies, no more silence. The storm that had raged the night before left behind a tense stillness. The streets were washed clean, but inside the Mitchell household, nothing felt pure anymore. Darren had spent the entire day in calculated silence, studying every move his wife made. Elaine, unaware of how much he already knew, tried to act normal, setting the table, humming faintly under her breath, pretending her world wasn't seconds from collapse. The clock ticked toward 7. Dinner was always punctual in their home, a ritual Darren insisted upon. Tonight, the candles flickered between them, their soft glow bouncing off the silverware like small blades. Description. Elaine placed a bowl of roasted vegetables at the center of the table. The air carried the faint aroma of thyme and lemon. The rain tapped gently against the kitchen window, rhythmic, almost taunting narration. Darren poured himself a glass of wine and watched her closely. Every movement felt rehearsed. Every smile seemed borrowed. "You've been quiet lately," she said, forcing a light tone. "Work's been busy," he replied, cutting his steak with slow precision. "How about you? Things at the hospital?" Her hands froze for half a second before she recovered. "The usual chaos. You know how it is." "I wouldn't," he said quietly, "but I'd like to understand more." She hesitated, sensing a shift beneath the calmness. "About what?" He looked up, eyes steady. "About you." Description. The room seemed to shrink. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator, the clink of cutlery, and the unspoken tension that hung thick in the air. Narration. Elaine forced a small laugh. "That's a strange thing to say after 7 years of marriage." "Strange things happen all the time," he said, his voice colder now. "People hide things, even from those they love." Her breath caught. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," he said, sipping his wine. "Just making conversation." But the word conversation carried weight. He knew she could hear it, the accusation buried inside it. Dialogue. "Darren," she said softly, "if something's wrong, just tell me." He set down his glass, leaning back in his chair. "You'd tell me the truth if I asked you, right?" "Of course," she whispered. "Good," he said. "Because lies have a way of poisoning everything." The sentence lingered like smoke. Narration. Elaine looked down, pretending to rearrange her plate. Her pulse raced. She could feel his gaze cutting into her, peeling back the layers she had built so carefully. Darren stood, circled behind her, and rested his hands on her shoulders. His touch was gentle, but she flinched. "You're trembling," he murmured. "Relax. I'm not angry." Her voice barely escaped her throat. "Then what are you?" He leaned close to her ear. "Curious." Description. The scent of his cologne mixed with the burnt edge of the candles. The shadows on the wall stretched like watching figures. Narration. Elaine swallowed hard, forcing herself not to look away. "You don't have to test me," she said. "I haven't done anything wrong." He smiled faintly. "That's the thing about guilt. It doesn't always need proof." For the rest of the meal, neither spoke. Forks scraped softly against porcelain, rain whispered outside, and the air between them thickened with invisible truths. When dinner ended, Darren began clearing the dishes, something he never did. Elaine stood frozen, uncertain whether to thank him or fear him. As she turned to leave the kitchen, he said, "Oh, by the way, I upgraded the Wi-Fi this morning. You'll need a new password." She froze. "What?" "The password," he repeated, glancing at her. "Funny thing, I found your old one written in your desk drawer, right next to some interesting receipts." Elaine's throat tightened. "You went through my things." He smiled calmly. "Marriage means transparency, doesn't it?" Narration. Her heart pounded as she turned away, masking her panic behind a forced smile. Upstairs, she locked herself in the bathroom and leaned over the sink, gripping the porcelain so tightly her knuckles whitened. She could still feel his eyes on her, the careful patience, the The waiting. Description. In the dim light, her reflection looked like a stranger. Pale, trembling, haunted. Narration. Downstairs, Darren dried his hands, then checked the small black device tucked beneath the shelf, a motion-activated camera hidden inside the air vent. Tonight was only the beginning. Tomorrow, he told himself, he would get proof. The house was asleep, but nothing inside it rested. Midnight poured through the windows like liquid shadow, settling over the Mitchell home in heavy silence. Darren sat alone in his study, the blue light of his laptop reflecting off his tired eyes. On the screen, a grainy feed from the hidden camera flickered to life. Soft static, the faint hum of air, and then movement. Elaine appeared in frame, wrapped in a robe, pacing the kitchen. She poured a glass of water, set it down, then pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered before she began typing. Darren muted the audio, leaning closer, watching every trembling gesture. He didn't need words to know what guilt looked like. Description. The clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat. The only other sound was the rain starting again, gentle at first, then harder, drumming against the roof in nervous rhythm. Narration. Elaine's face was pale, her expression drawn tight with fear. She picked up the phone again and whispered into it. Darren unmuted. "Levi," she breathed. "He knows something. I can feel it." Her voice cracked, raw and frightened. "I don't know what to do anymore. Please, don't call me. Not until I figure this out." Dar. Anne froze. The confirmation hit like cold water. There it was, truth, stripped bare, no longer hiding behind suspicion. He leaned back slowly, a dark calm spreading through him. Dialogue. "So that's your confession," he murmured to himself. "Not to me, but to him." Description. Outside, thunder rolled across the neighborhood. The house creaked as if responding to the storm building inside it. Narration. An hour later, Elaine moved upstairs, unaware of the watchful lens following her. She stopped by the bedroom window, staring out into the night. For a long moment, she whispered something Darren couldn't make out. Then she slid down the wall and began to cry, quiet, desperate sobs that filled the dark. He should have felt vindicated, but instead, a strange hollowness settled in. This wasn't triumph. It was grief in disguise. The woman he once loved now looked like a stranger, fragile, trembling, lost inside the consequences of her own choices. Description. The glow from the bedside lamp painted half her face in amber light, leaving the other half swallowed by shadow. She looked divided, exactly as she was. Narration. Downstairs, Darren closed the laptop, his mind spinning. Evidence was power, but power demanded control. He couldn't confront her yet, not without a plan. Still, he couldn't resist one final move. He took his phone, dialed her number, and listened as it rang through the quiet. Elaine answered softly. "Darren? Why are you awake?" "Couldn't sleep," he said. "You?" "Same. I keep thinking about us," he continued. "How everything feels distant lately." Her voice trembled. "We'll be okay. We just need time." "Time," he repeated. "Yeah. Time always reveals the truth, doesn't it?" A pause. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Go back to bed," he said, hanging up before she could reply. Description. He sat there for a long time, the phone still in his hand, the hum of the storm wrapping around the house like a warning. Moments later, he reopened the laptop, rewinding the footage, pausing at her face, those wide, terrified eyes staring into the dark as if she could feel him watching. He clicked, save. The file name appeared on screen. Confession 001. Satisfied, he shut the computer and turned off the lamp. Upstairs, Elaine lay awake, listening to the faint echo of thunder. Something inside her told her she wasn't alone, that the darkness in the house wasn't just from the storm. She sat up suddenly, staring at the vent near the ceiling. A red light blinked for a moment, then vanished. Description. Her breath hitched. The silence between raindrops grew louder, heavier, alive. Narration. In that moment, both husband and wife sat awake in separate rooms, each realizing the same truth. The game had changed. Neither of them knew it yet, but the next step wouldn't be confession, it would be evidence. And evidence, unlike love, never lies. The next morning arrived like a fog that refused to lift. The Mitchell house looked the same from the outside, clean, orderly, suburban, but something inside had changed overnight. There was a quiet tension that clung to the air, invisible yet suffocating. Darren moved through the kitchen with mechanical calm, pouring coffee while Elaine sat at the counter, pretending to read messages on her phone. Description. Steam rose from their mugs, curling and fading between them like unspoken words. Narration. Neither spoke for nearly 10 minutes. The silence felt deliberate, like a shared performance both refused to break. Darren studied her reflection in the window, her stillness, her half-smile, her eyes that avoided his. He thought about the file saved on his computer, the secret sitting only a few clicks away. Elaine finally spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. "You're leaving early today?" "Yeah," he said. "Got a patient transfer. Long shift." She nodded, dead, but her hand trembled slightly as she lifted her cup. Description. Outside, sunlight tried to push through the gray clouds, but even daylight felt muted, like the world itself was watching, waiting for something to unravel. Narration. At the hospital, Darren walked the halls with a cold, focused detachment. Every beep of the monitors and whisper of footsteps felt distant. His colleagues noticed the change. He wasn't angry or sad, just eerily still, like a man holding his breath underwater. Dr. Morales stopped him in the hallway. "You okay, Mitch? You look like you haven't slept." "I'm fine," Darren replied, forcing a grin. "Just thinking too much." He wasn't lying. He was thinking too much. About guilt, about lies, about how easily love can rot when truth starts to surface. Description. Later that night, Elaine scrolled through her phone on the couch, deleting messages, changing passwords, erasing traces of conversations that had once made her heart race. Narration. But no matter how many files she deleted, she couldn't erase the feeling that something was watching her. Every flicker of light, every sound from upstairs felt like proof of unseen eyes. She told herself it was paranoia, grief mixed with guilt. But deep down, she knew Darren had changed. He was colder, quieter, sharper. The man who once touched her cheek before work now brushed past her like a stranger. That night, he came home late. His scrubs smelled faintly of antiseptic. Dialogue. "Long day?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," he said, taking off his jacket. "Lot of cleanup." "Cleanup?" He looked at her for a long second, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "Hospitals are full of messes, Elaine. You'd be surprised what people hide." Her throat tightened. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged, walking past her. "Nothing, just an observation. Description." The generator hummed behind them. The clock ticked, steady and cruel. After he went upstairs, Elaine sat frozen, her pulse thudding in her ears. There was something different in his voice, something heavy and deliberate, like he was testing her reactions. Meanwhile, in the study, Darren reopened his laptop. He replayed the footage from the previous night. Each time he watched it, her voice sounded different, more calculated, more deceitful. It wasn't enough anymore just to know. He needed proof that others could see too. He began copying files, organizing them into folders labeled by time, by location, by name. His medical mind turned methodical, collecting evidence, documenting behavior, analyzing tone, description. The glow from the screen illuminated his face in the darkness, turning his expression into something almost unrecognizable. Narration. Downstairs, Elaine poured herself a glass of wine, her mind racing. She opened her messages again, and this time, she didn't delete. She typed, "We need to talk. It's not safe anymore." Her hands shook as she pressed send. She looked toward the ceiling, where she thought she saw a faint red flicker, then blinked. Gone. Description. The sound of rain began again outside, soft and rhythmic, echoing the tension beating through her chest. Narration. In that moment, both of them crossed an invisible line. Darren from suspicion to obsession, Elaine from fear to desperation. Whatever had once held them together had finally snapped. By morning, their marriage wouldn't just feel different. It would be different. Because by dawn, Darren's folder titled The Shift would be complete, and Elaine's message would reach the wrong person. Morning crept into the Mitchell house like an unwanted guest. The air was thick with the residue of last night's storm. Damp walls, cold floors, and the faint scent of something metallic lingering in the kitchen. Elaine stood by the counter, her hands wrapped around the cold glass of milk. It was a routine gesture, one that used to feel comforting. But today the milk trembled with her grip. Description. Light filtered through half-closed blinds, carving stripes across the kitchen table where Darren's phone and stethoscope lay like forgotten tools of another life. Narration. She hadn't slept. The text she'd sent hours earlier still hadn't been answered. Her phone screen remained dark, mocking her with silence. Somewhere upstairs, she heard the faint sound of footsteps, the slow, deliberate kind that made her skin crawl. Darren entered, looking calm, composed, too composed. He kissed her cheek, a ghost of contact, icy and mechanical. Dialogue. "Morning," he said. She nodded. "You're up early." He glanced at the glass in her hand. "Milk again? You never used to drink milk in the mornings." "It helps me sleep," she lied. "Funny," he replied. "It's morning." Description. For a moment, neither moved. The refrigerator hummed, the rain gutter dripped, and the house seemed to breathe around them. Narration. Darren turned to the stove, pouring himself coffee, but his eyes drifted toward her reflection in the microwave door, small, nervous, shaking. Every movement she made was an unspoken confession. Elaine set the glass down. "I was thinking maybe we should take a break," she whispered. He froze. "A break?" "Just a few days apart. You've been distant. I feel like I can't reach you anymore." He turned slowly, his tone almost gentle. "You're right, Elaine. You can't." Description. The clock on the wall clicked loudly between them. Tick, tock, tick. Narration. He walked past her, brushing her shoulder just enough to make her flinch. The smell of antiseptic lingered on his clothes. It wasn't just the hospital. It was him, sterilized, emotionless, precise. Elaine tried to steady her breathing. Something about his calm fright tend her more than anger ever could. She watched as he picked up her phone from the table, glanced at the screen, then placed it back down. "You expecting someone to call?" he asked. "No," she said too quickly. He smiled faintly. "Then maybe turn it off. We wouldn't want any interruptions." Description. Outside, the sun broke briefly through the clouds, flashing across the kitchen window like a camera's shutter. Narration. He walked away, leaving her with the glass of milk still half full. For a long time, she stared at it. Something in the color seemed off, thicker, maybe, or too pale. But paranoia had become her constant companion. She couldn't tell what was real anymore. She poured the rest into the sink. The milk circled the drain in slow spirals, vanishing like a secret swallowed whole. Description. Her reflection in the metal basin looked older, tired, and frightened, like a woman already halfway erased. Narration. That night, Darren didn't come home until late. He entered quietly, his shoes barely making a sound on the tile. Elaine pretended to sleep, though her eyes followed him through the darkness. He paused at her bedside for a moment, studying her face. Dialogue. "You shouldn't waste food," he said softly. Her eyes opened. "What?" "The milk. You poured it out." Her pulse spiked. "It tasted strange." He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Everything tastes strange when you're guilty." Description. Lightning flashed outside, white and merciless. His face appeared for an instant, calm, deliberate, terrifying. Narration. He stood, turned off the bedside lamp, and left her in darkness. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hall. Elaine sat up, her heart pounding. She knew now that the line between suspicion and danger had vanished completely. She reached under the mattress, pulled out her phone, and began recording a voice note. Dialogue. "If anything happens to me," she whispered, "look at the files on Darren's computer. The folder called The Shift. He knows." Description. Her voice trembled, blending with the soft rumble of distant thunder. Narration. She pressed stop, saved the message, and hid the phone inside the lamp base beside her bed. Down the hall, Darren opened his laptop, watching a live feed from the bedroom camera. A faint smile crossed his lips. "Good night, Elaine." And with that, the glass of milk became more than a drink. It became evidence of fear, of control, of something irreversible already in motion. Morning light hit the hospital in pale gold, but Darren felt none of it. He moved through the sterile hallways like a ghost in scrubs. Every beep of a monitor, every rustle of paper, every quiet laugh from the nurse's station felt distant, irrelevant. His mind wasn't here. It was still in that house, still with her. Description. The smell of disinfectant hung heavy in the air, sharp and cold. The world outside continued as if nothing had changed, but inside Darren, something had. Narration. He had always thought of himself as rational, methodical. But now, he was becoming something else. Calculating, deliberate, capable of anything. And today, he planned to see the woman who had started it all. Her name was Levi Ann Cruz, a surgical technician from the Philippines who had joined the hospital 6 months earlier. Her laughter was quiet, but constant, her eyes always alert, her presence magnetic in ways that made people lean closer without realizing it. Darren found her in the staff lounge, her hair tied back, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled when she saw him. Dialogue. "Dr. Mitchell?" she greeted softly. "You look tired. Long night?" "You could say that," he replied. "You need rest," she said, her tone casual but laced with concern. "You've been carrying the whole ward on your back lately." Narration. He studied her face. The warmth in her voice once charmed him. Now it's so, and it rehearsed. The woman he once trusted with his secrets now represented betrayal itself. The sunlight through the blinds sliced across her face, revealing faint shadows under her eyes, evidence of nights spent hiding instead of sleeping. Dialogue. "Levi," he said finally, "we need to talk. Privately." She hesitated, sensing the weight in his tone. Of course. What's wrong? Narration. They stepped into an empty supply room. Darren closed the door behind them, the metallic click echoing through the silence. For a moment, they stood face to face, two people who knew too much about each other, yet pretended not to. Dialogue. I know about the messages, he said. Her face went still. What messages? The ones between you and Elaine. Levi's breath hitched. She told you? No, he replied. You did. Description. The color drained from her face. The room felt smaller, the fluorescent lights buzzing above them like trapped flies. Narration. She turned away, pretending to organize bandages, but her hands shook. It wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. She was lonely. So was I. You were never home. He stepped closer. You slept with my wife. Tears formed in her eyes. It was never about you. She said she loved you. She just couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I tried to stop it. Dialogue. Stop it? He repeated. You encouraged it. You gave her somewhere to hide. Levi's voice cracked. You think she's the victim, Darren? She's dangerous. She told me things, dark things. You have no idea what she's capable of. Narration. He didn't answer. Her words bounced off him like stones against glass. Dangerous? Elaine? The woman crying herself to sleep every night? Or was this another manipulation? A way to shift blame, to rewrite the story before it ended? He took a step back, suddenly uncertain. Maybe both women were lying. Maybe neither of them were. Description. Outside, a storm gathered again, the sky dimming to a bruised gray that pressed against the hospital windows. Narration. Levi wiped her eyes, voice trembling. If she finds out I talked to you, she'll come after me. You need to be careful. Don't worry, he said coldly. I already am. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Dialogue. One more thing, Levi. The night I told her I knew, she stopped drinking her milk. Her brow furrowed. What? He smiled faintly. Nothing. Just thought you should know. Description. He left her standing there, frozen, her reflection caught in the glass cabinet behind her. A woman who thought she could hide from the truth. Narration. That evening, Darren reviewed the footage again. Only this time, there was new movement. Elaine wasn't alone in the house. The camera caught a shadow, a second figure moving behind her. A woman's voice whispered something unintelligible. And then, silence. Darren leaned forward, heart pounding. Levi had warned him about Elaine, but what if Elaine had found out about her instead? Description. On the screen, the faint glint of a wine glass appeared, reflecting two figures, one trembling, one calm. Narration. By the time the footage ended, Darren knew one thing with chilling certainty. Someone had already crossed the line. And the next time the camera caught them together, it wouldn't be for conversation. It would be for evidence. Narration. Night had settled over the Mitchell house like a heavy blanket, thick with the weight of things unsaid. Darren sat alone in his car across the street, engine off, watching the faint light in the upstairs window flicker behind the curtains. That room, Elaine's room, had become a stage of secrets, and tonight he planned to uncover the final act. Description. Rain whispered against the windshield. The street was quiet, except for the rhythmic hum of the street lamp buzzing overhead. In the passenger seat sat Darren's laptop, its screen paused on the last frame of footage he'd found. Two shapes in the kitchen, one bending over the counter, the other standing perfectly still. He'd rewound that scene again and again, searching for the truth hidden between shadows. But the more he watched, the less he understood. Who was the second figure? Levi claimed Elaine was dangerous, yet the footage looked like fear, not aggression. Dialogue. Two people, Darren whispered to himself. Two stories, and one of them ends tonight. Description. He stepped out into the drizzle, the smell of wet soil and petrol filling the air. The front door creaked open under his hand. The house greeted him with silence. Narration. Every creak of the floorboards echoed through the empty hall. He felt as though he were trespassing in a place that had already buried its dead. On the mantelpiece, the framed photo of their wedding still stood, smiling faces frozen in time, pretending nothing had gone wrong. In the kitchen, the faint scent of vanilla and detergent lingered. The wine glass from the footage sat on the counter, spotless now. Too spotless. Description. He moved to the sink. The dish rack was empty, except for a single teaspoon, polished, gleaming under the dim light. Narration. He opened the cabinet beneath the sink. Inside were the usual things: cleaning bottles, gloves, and, something new, a small plastic container labeled soil samples. Dialogue. Soil, Darren murmured. He lifted the lid. Inside was dirt, damp and black, with something pale buried within. Description. A fragment of porcelain. A tooth. No, it was a button, snapped clean off a nurse's uniform. Levi's uniform. Narration. Darren's stomach turned. It wasn't just a domestic argument anymore. It was evidence. He stumbled back, breathing hard, his thoughts racing. Two women, two betrayals, two graves. The phrase came unbidden, whispered in his mind like an echo he couldn't trace. Dialogue. You dig one for your enemy, he muttered, and one for yourself. Narration. Footsteps creaked. Upstairs. Slow. Careful. Someone else was in the house. Darren froze. He reached for the nearest object, a heavy brass candlestick, and moved toward the staircase. The shadows above shifted, then stilled. Description. Lightning flashed through the window, carving a brief silhouette at the top of the stairs. Slender frame, long hair. Elaine. Dialogue. Elaine, he called softly. We need to talk. Her voice drifted down, calm but hollow. I know. I've been waiting. Narration. She descended slowly, each step deliberate, her expression unreadable. There was no sign of panic, no guilt, only resignation. Dialogue. You shouldn't have come back, she said. I saw the footage, he replied. Levi was here. Elaine nodded once. Yes, she came to confess. But not what you think. Narration. He felt his pulse hammering. Where is she now? She's gone, Elaine said quietly. And soon, I will be too. Description. Her hands trembled as she placed something on the counter, a small USB drive, slick with condensation. Dialogue. This holds everything, she whispered. Our marriage, her lies, my truth. Narration. He stared at the drive, then at her. Elaine, what did you do? She smiled faintly, a tear slipping down her cheek. What I had to. Sometimes love and justice share the same grave. Description. Thunder cracked outside, rattling the windows. Narration. By the time Darren looked up again, she was gone, disappeared into the storm like smoke. He clutched the USB, trembling. Two graves, one for the dead, one for the living who refused to let go. Description. Outside, police sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, growing closer. The rain fell harder, washing away footprints on the porch. Narration. Darren stood there, soaked and shaking, the truth pressing down like earth over a coffin. The secrets buried in that drive would either save him or bury him beside her. Narration. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind a sky the color of ash. Darren sat in his home office, dripping coffee onto a pile of unfinished case notes, staring at the small USB drive lying beside his keyboard. It looked harmless, ordinary, but he knew better. Inside it waited the truth Elaine had promised, and the destruction she'd hinted at. Description. The house felt different now, quieter. The ticking clock on the wall seemed too loud. Even the refrigerator's hum carried an edge of menace, like the house itself was holding its breath. Narration. He had spent years logging into encrypted systems, medical databases, patient records. Security was second nature. But this was personal. He inserted the USB. The screen flickered, a single folder appearing. Our final record. Dialogue. Darren muttered, "Password protected. Of course it is." He tried the obvious first, birthdays, wedding anniversaries, even her pet's name. Each attempt failed. Then he remembered the last time she'd used a password like this. The password. The one she'd given him years ago when she wanted him to find something. Narration. Back then, it had been a message of trust. Now it felt like a test. Dialogue. He whispered to himself, "What was it, Elaine? What did you use that night?" Description. He closed his eyes and pictured her handwriting, the way she used to sign notes left on the kitchen counter. "Don't forget your coffee. Love, E." Narration. Then it hit him. Not a name, not a date, a phrase. The one she'd said every time they fought. "Only the truth heals." He typed it in. The folder opened. Inside were 3 video files, labeled chronologically. Confession, 02, Confrontation, 03, The End, Description. His hands trembled as he clicked the first one. The screen filled with static before resolving into Elaine's face. Dialogue. "If you're watching, this," she began, her voice calm but tired, "then you've already found the drive. And I'm probably gone." Narration. She sat at the same kitchen table from their home, the soft glow of the lamp outlining her face. There was no fear, only exhaustion. Elaine's voice. "I know you've been watching me, Darren. I saw the cameras. At first I was angry. Then I understood. Maybe you needed proof more than you needed me." Description. Her eyes glistened as she leaned closer to the camera. Elaine. "I didn't kill Levi. She came to me terrified. She said someone was following her, someone from the hospital. You were right about one thing, though. There are 2 graves, but neither of them were meant for us." Narration. The video cut abruptly. Darren froze, heart pounding. Another person? Someone from the hospital? He opened 02 Confrontation. The camera showed Levi pacing the living room, shaking, whispering to someone off-screen. Her voice cracked. Levi. "I told her everything. I told her what they were doing. She said she'd expose them all." Narration. Then came a sound, a knock at the door. Levi turned, startled. The video ended. Darren stared at the frozen frame, at the shadow creeping behind her. Description. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His reflection on the dark screen looked like a stranger's. Narration. He clicked the final file, 03, The End. But instead of video, a text document opened. Just one line. "If you want the truth, use the password again, but not here." Dialogue. "What does that mean?" he whispered. Description. He scrolled down. There was an address embedded in the file, coordinates leading to a storage unit on the outskirts of town. Narration. That was when the hum of his laptop shifted. A soft click beneath the desk. A faint green light blinked. Elaine had set the USB to transmit data. His pulse spiked. She's watching me, he mewed. Description. The computer screen went black. A single message appeared. Trust no one from the hospital. Darren ripped the drive out, breathing hard. The air in the room felt electric, charged with paranoia. If Elaine was right, then everything he thought he knew, Levi, the affair, even the recordings, had been part of something larger. Description. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance again, drawing closer. Too close. Narration. He shoved the drive into his pocket, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. There was no turning back now. Elaine's words echoed in his head as he stepped into the gray morning light. Only the truth heals. Description. But truth, Darren realized, could also kill. Narration. He started the car, the address glowing faintly on his phone screen. As the engine roared to life, he whispered to himself, almost like a prayer, dialogue. The password again. And this time, for the last time. Narration. Then he drove toward the coordinates, unaware that someone else was already waiting there, watching, recording, and ready to end what Elaine had begun.